am going to be telling you about my 5-day stay in the Code Red COVID unit at the hospital. Did I have COVID? No. Is this clickbait? Unfortunately not. So I'm going to get into my story. For those of you guys who don't know, our lives have been a little bit all over the place the past couple months. I'm a single mom, and I have 2 boys, Sparrow, who is 4, and Bodie, who is 2. My ex, their dad, was getting deployed during the pandemic, and like all of our support system. Who wants to spend a pandemic alone with your 2 kids around no family, no friends, no nothing? Anyways, so it starts out with us leaving Oklahoma, where we lived in our double-decker bus, Florence, that we are still renovating. It should be done in actually the next couple weeks, so I'm super excited. That's why we're back here to work on it. But we left Oklahoma in our bus, Florence, and went all the way to California. That is a 25-hour drive. My dad, brother, and sister came to pick us up. We drove all the way back there, and we were in California. While we were there, it was good and bad. I have a couple of past videos that kind of speak briefly on it. I can't really disclose what happened, but we had to leave very last minute with like a couple hours notice. The kid's grandma flew into California from Minnesota, picked us up. We drove all the way to Minnesota. That's a 39-hour drive. We did it straight through. Again, we were in Minnesota. There was good and there was bad, but that's pretty much where we stayed. We either lived on the farm in the city, the farm in the middle of nowhere, which was absolutely gorgeous, great for the boys to have nature, or we lived in the city where we couldn't go outside much, but it was beautiful. There was fireworks going on all the time. There's things to see. There's farmers market and stuff like that. So I'm gonna go back to when my symptoms first started. So we had to do a quick road trip to Oklahoma City. I had some lawyer's appointments and some doctor's appointments, and their grandma had purchased an RV, so we were able to drive to Oklahoma City without interacting with people other than the doctors and the lawyers that I met with, because we had a bathroom on the RV. We paid for gas outside. We didn't really interact with people at all on the way there, and it was really nice to be able to have that and be safe during the pandemic while road tripping. So we went to Oklahoma City, and while we were there, I started experiencing this feeling like there was maybe 2 fingers lodged in my chest. Not painful, just kind of uncomfortable, because like who wants 2 fingers lodged in their chest? So I had that feeling. Over the 2 days that we were there, it started to feel like it was more like a ball, like some bigger, round, more intrusive, annoying, heavy on my chest. Again, not painful, not anything else. I didn't really have any other symptoms. For those of you who don't know, I broke my face a year ago pretty badly, to the point where I have constant drainage. And drainage causes a lot of irritation of my throat and causes me to cough. Well, with COVID, people take it as a sign of, you must have the virus because I have a cough and I have runny, irritated nose. But it's just all the time for the past year or so. It just doesn't stop. Anyways, it just doesn't stop at all. So I get back to Minnesota in the city, and we're living in the city pretty much by ourselves, which is good for us. It's good to have a routine. We're getting back to homeschooling. We're doing good stuff. But we are in Minnesota, in the city, kind of isolated. And we're also quarantining because we weren't sure if we had the virus from some of the people that we interacted with, so we were kind of just quarantining, keeping safe for the next 14 days. So I ordered groceries. We were good to just like be quarantined. But this feeling kept getting more intrusive. So I just called the nurse advice line. I was like, hey, I've got this feeling. Is it something to worry about or not? Like, it's not painful at all. It's just been, now it's been a couple days, like 2 or 3 days where it's been like this and it's not going away. And so she just said, it's not like super emergency thing, but like go to the urgent care, get it checked out, make sure you're okay. And I was like, okay. So the nurse advice line, and they're like, okay, it could be your heart, it could be your kidneys, because I have history of kidney stones and a lot of kidney issues. Well, again, with COVID, some of the rules are different. I'm a single mom and I have 2 kids. At that time, it was us in this apartment alone. So I called the urgent care and I was like, I have my 2 kids, am I allowed to bring them in with me? I understand the virus, but I don't have anywhere to take them, and I would like to get this checked out. Well, they basically said, sorry, we can't have you checked out like that. So I was like, well, then can I speak to somebody on the phone? So I'm on the phone with them. They basically told me the same thing. Well, we can't help you unless you come in, but you can't bring your kids. And I'm like, okay, well, that's great. Thank you. So I hang up. Well, then all of a sudden, like, the pain's increasing, and I'm like, what's going on? Well, the nurse advice line then tells me, call the emergency room. So I called the emergency room, and I said, hey, can I bring my kids in? They said no. The lady on the phone basically said, if you bring your kids in, we will turn you away, which is illegal. They cannot actually turn you away if you're desperately in need. But me being in pain, being stressed out, being like by myself for the past couple days, am like a little bit crazy and believe that. While I'm on the phone with the emergency room, my son drops a weighted door holder, I don't know what it's called, on his foot. And I'm just like, he's screaming, losing his mind. I tell the lady, I'm like, great, now my son just broke his foot. And she says, I'm not kidding you, she says, oh, well, now you guys can both come in. And I was like, great, so what should I do to my other child who has no injuries, who you said he can't come in? But it's good that my child broke his foot because he can come in, right? So I'm just annoyed. Like, at this point, I'm just annoyed. Also, I have a group message with my friends, and so I updated them. I'm gonna turn on this air, it's like I'm stuck in my face. I updated them throughout what was going on, so I'll put in some of the clips because you guys can see kind of what I'm going through. Sorry for the filters, like, it's my friend's Snapchat group. I wasn't planning on sharing these videos ever because I didn't think it was going to be anything. So I called the urgent care back and I was like, look, I just need to talk to the person on the phone, just give me some advice. I know that's not really gonna help, but I don't have any other options unless you guys are gonna let me come in, which they wouldn't. No, how did that go? I don't remember. It's a little bit foggy. We've had a lot going on the past couple weeks. Anyways, I'm on the phone with somebody. It was either the emergency room lady or the urgent care lady, and all of a sudden my chest started to have this very sharp stabbing, almost like a sewing needle pain through my chest. It was extremely painful, like to the point where I couldn't stand up straight. It was like very overwhelming. I've never felt pain in my chest or in my heart before, so it was like, ow. So she had me sit down, take my heart rate, and it was very elevated. So she called the ambulance when I was on the phone. I couldn't speak very well, like it was very painful. It kind of caught me off guard. I couldn't speak very well. She called the ambulance. They came to the house. They basically just ran a couple tests and said, look, you need to go to the emergency room, but if you don't want to pay for the ambulance ride, you can have somebody pick you up and come take you. So I called the kid's grandma and said, hey, can you be here? Like, what time can you be here? We need to go to the hospital, but I don't want to pay $1,000 for an ambulance ride if I don't have to. So she came, picked us up, took us to the hospital. So I'm now there with Sparrow and myself. Sparrow, kid is like jumping off the bed, running around, walking, and I'm sitting there thinking, maybe I'm just wasting our time because there's no way this kid's foot is broken. Like he is fully okay, walking, running, poking his actual foot. So I'm like looking at him, and at the same time, like they're running all these tests on me while he's there. And the kid is amazing. Like he's in a hospital environment, he thrives because there's so much information and so much things that he can learn about and ask questions about. So he was just like learning and soaking in all this information, and he was the best 4-year-old I've ever seen. I'm so thankful for that because that would have been really difficult to be going through that. So they'd be like giving me an IV, and he's like, oh, tell me about that, and like, why do you put the needle in, and how do you get the blood out, and what test are you gonna run on mommy's blood? And he was really good. So that was great because it was chest pain and it was like severe. They rushed me in right away. I had an EKG right away. Again, sorry for those of you who are new or watching this and don't know me. I have Asperger's, so sometimes I struggle with speech or fidgeting or all the things that I'm doing that are kind of annoying to watch. I understand, but I'm sorry. It's been a while since I filmed a video, so I'm gonna stumble over my words a little bit more than usual. So I did the whole EKG. They rushed us back to a room right away. One of the most frustrating things for me about going to hospital is getting my blood taken. I have always been told that I have these baby veins and to request a butterfly needle or a pediatric needle. Sometimes they listen, sometimes they don't listen because they don't believe me. At this specific hospital, the first nurse stuck the vein multiple times and couldn't get any blood out at all. Like, nothing was coming out. And at this point, I'd been on fluids. I drank water all day long. Like, they gave me fluids there to drink. And they're trying to get an IV where they could give me more fluids, but they stuck it, couldn't get any blood out at all. So she had to poke 3 more times. Couldn't get any blood out at all. So they did get an IV in and gave me more fluids to see if that was the problem, why my veins weren't giving any blood. So in the meantime, somebody else came in, poked the other arm a couple more times, and they were able to get some blood out, but not enough for what they needed. So they basically just kept coming back, poking me every hour or so to try and get what they needed out. And it was like painful, and my arms are now covered in like millions of stick marks. Like, the first time I've got a little bit of anxiety, now by like the 7th time I'm like, seriously, please stop. So another nurse comes in and they're like, look, we're gonna get the ultrasound machine in here. He basically gave me a little bit more information than people have given me before, and he said that my veins move extremely fast and they're pediatric size, like very small, they move very fast, and they don't like to give blood. So he got out the ultrasound machine and put it on my arm. At this time I had already had 2 nurses try, and I had like 7 stick marks between the 2 arms. He found a vein and he was like, look, I think I can get it, but we're gonna wait for the shift change because Jonathan's coming in, he's really good with veins, we're just gonna wait for him to do it. And I was like, fine with me. I will wait. If you think that this man can get the vein, go ahead. And thankfully he did the ultrasound. He tried like 2 times and then he got it. So still, it was an extra poke than I wanted, but he got it. So that was great. I'm going to speed this up because this is not really the portion that I'm trying to tell you guys about. They ran a couple tests and they were like, look, I think that you just have COVID, so go home. And I'm like, okay, great, but like, what if I don't have COVID, then what's going on? And they're like, no, look, like, you probably have COVID. So they ran the test on me, sent me home. Sparrow did get to go to the x-ray, and the nurse came and got him. I couldn't go with him because I was a possible COVID case. So the nurse took him to the x-ray, and she asked him, like, do you want me to carry you? Do you want a wheelchair? And he just looks at her and goes, oh, no, I think I can walk today. And she's like, okay. So he walks. Crazy kid, goes to the x-ray, comes back, and I'm like, there's no way this kid's foot is broken. He gets back, the doctor comes in, she's like, oh yeah, his foot's actually broken. So he had broken the joint on his 3rd and 4th toe, and then the foot where it kind of connects. So they can't really do much for that. They just needed some follow-up and to make sure that he walks correctly with it, being that it's the joint, and to see if it's going to develop arthritis in the future. But basically, he couldn't do anything about it. But I was just like, okay, this kid's got a broken foot and he does not care. So we had to rewrap it every day, and he's had follow-up appointments. Fast forward, I go home, they basically just said you have COVID. So then the next day, I'm at home. This is literally the next day. And I start coughing up blood. And I'm like, well, this is probably not great. I also start fainting, and that day before I went to the hospital, I fainted 5 times. Don't know why, just kept fainting, throwing up blood, coughing up blood, and I'm like, something's not right. I'm also like extremely out of breath, like huge shortness of breath. Anytime that I walk, it feels like I've run a marathon. Anytime that I stand there to stir a pot of macaroni, I feel like I've worked out for a year. Like, it was absolutely exhausting, and I couldn't figure out what was going on with me. So I call the stupid emergency room, and I was like, can you give me my COVID results? They were supposed to call the next day. This hospital had a 24-hour where they could get your test results back to you. So I called and they said, you guys didn't get the results back to me. Can you tell me if I'm positive? Because if I am, like, that's what it is. I don't have to worry. Or not. And she was like, no, we can't tell you. You have to come in. And I said, well, again, I'm a single mom. I have 2 kids. What do you want me to do? She was like, well, you have to come in. And I was like, great. Meanwhile, everybody's like, just go anyways. Like, they're just going to have to deal with your kids. They're just saying that to be difficult. Like, I understand they don't want kids there because it's not easy. Like, there's kids running around, they're trying to run tests on the parents, like, it's not convenient, but like, I'm a single mom, I don't know what you want me to do about it. So it gets really bad to the point where I'm like, I'm exhausted, I cannot muster any energy to do anything. I'm like breathing super heavy. So lady on the emergency line says, call the ambulance. And I was like, why? You know, like, you guys couldn't help me yesterday. Why would I come back? So I call the ambulance. They show up and they're like, yeah, we're not going to give you an option to go by yourself. You need to come to the hospital now. I mean, they would have given me an option, but basically they were just saying, like, you need to come with us. And I was like, okay, that's fine. So my kids, being my kids, are all excited, like, let's get our toys, let's go to the ambulance. This is the best thing that's ever happened to us in our entire lives. Like, they're obsessed with ambulances. So we go downstairs, we get in the ambulance. Again, they don't really want kids in the ambulance because it's not set up for kids unless they're the patient. But they were absolutely amazing. Like, these men walked around, got the toys with the kids, they communicated with them, they helped them stay, like, excited and happy, and they advocated for me, and it was amazing. It's back. Basically, we go through triage again, and I'm just saying, like, I was here yesterday, I don't know what's going on. I'm coughing up blood, I'm fainting, all of this is going on, but you guys told me this is what happened. So we literally went to the front desk, and they were like, no, you're COVID negative. And I was like, surprising. Like, surprised everybody. Nobody really believed it. I guess you can get false negatives, so again, they just didn't really believe it. So we sit there, and I ended up fainting in the hospital on the floor. The boys were screaming, like, mommy, wake up. One of the cleaners walked by and said, do you want me to tell somebody? I said, yeah, if you can, but, like, nobody cared. The next day again, I start fainting and hitting my head a lot. My mother-in-law basically said, let's just try a new hospital because these ones are better. And I was like, yeah, I'm not going back to the other hospital. Meanwhile, I call the other hospital again because I'm like, I had to leave yesterday and this is what's happening. Like, it's increasingly getting worse. The other hospital was like, well, let me just tell you, if you get admitted, we're going to take your children away. We're going to call child services. And I was like, lovely. Like, my kid's dad is deployed and I'm trying to do whatever I can, and I'm a single mom, and you're going to take my kids away if I get admitted. Again, I get it, because if I die, then my children have nowhere to go. Like, if I get admitted, the children can't be there. I get it, but, like, way to really stress somebody out who's already going through who knows what. My earrings are closed, don't notice that. So yeah, I was like, I'm not going back to the hospital. So go to the other hospital, and they were wonderful. They checked me in. Again, I fainted in triage, hit my head, so they basically were like, stop moving, you can't move anymore. And the doctor says, you're going to be admitted because we don't know what's going on. Now, due to this cough and runny nose that I have, they didn't believe that I didn't have COVID. So they put me into the code red COVID unit. Now, being in this code red COVID unit was unlike anything that I've ever experienced before at a hospital. It was very interesting. Obviously, they had to take extra precautions, so we went through an abandoned part of the hospital so that we wouldn't come in contact with anybody else. So they took me the back way into my room. When we get there, from the day that I got there until the day that I tested negative for a third time, they asked me every day, do you feel a sense of doom? Do you feel depressed? Do you feel anxious? Do you feel psychotic? Do you feel any of these things? Now, I don't know if that's just because people are extra scared of COVID due to it being a global pandemic, or what. If you've been in the Code Red unit, or if you work at a hospital and they do this and can tell me why, I'd be interested in finding out. Basically, they asked these very in-depth mental health questions the entire time that they thought that I had COVID, and they were asking the other patients that as well. Now, when I tested negative for a third time, they completely cut off that part of my treatment or the way that they were speaking with me. Now, I do know that people were extra stressed because people were crying, screaming, yelling a lot. And I don't know what was going on. You're kind of isolated in your room, but you can hear that happening throughout the day, throughout the night, whatever. And it was a little interesting. It was something that I never really thought of with COVID. But yeah, so also when they come into your room, they come in full-on suits. Over their clothes, they got a new suit. They've got glasses, the face shield, masks, a hat. They've got gloves. They've got whatever. When they come into your room, they've got a curtain that they pull. They put on this new full outfit. They speak with you, go over everything with you, talk to you. And as they go out, they strip completely down, put it into the bin for wash, and then go out. So for me, again, I'm in a hospital and I shouldn't be insecure about asking for help, but having to ask them to come in to help me with everything made me feel bad, because I'm like, look at all these outfits that they're wasting. They have to change an outfit every time that they come in. Again, that kind of changed a little bit when I tested negative the third time. They still had face masks, shields, gloves, the hat things, but they didn't have the full suit. They didn't have to do that when I tested negative the third time. So being in the COVID unit was interesting. I did hear a lot of things that I didn't really think of with COVID. I do know that having, I can't think of the word, incontinence, urinary incontinence, basically where you just poop or pee uncontrollably, is an issue. I had no idea that that was an issue, but being in the COVID unit, at least once a day I could hear like, this person needs a pamper, or this person fell out of the bed and is peeing everywhere. And these are not older patients. I assumed that they would be older patients, but these, a lot of the times, were patients that were in my age range, that were in the COVID unit. So I just assumed that it would be really older people or really younger people that were having a struggle with this virus. Again, I am not anyone who knows anything about this virus, who can give you like super good information. Like, I know the basics of how to protect myself, how to look out for others, to be smart, to be courteous about it, but I didn't know a lot about the virus. And again, I think most of the people that I knew assumed that it would be older people that were having this issue as well, but a lot of the people in the hospital with me were younger people. I did hear a lot of different things that the doctors were saying. It seemed like they were split on who believed that this was a big deal and who didn't, so that was very interesting to hear. I was allowed to keep, after I tested negative, I was allowed to keep my door open and watch people walk by and like see things, like, because I was really isolated and had nothing to do. So I heard a lot of conversations that I thought were very interesting, and it was interesting to see that people that are even in the COVID unit seeing what's going on were split completely down the middle. Now, it was kind of frustrating because being in the COVID unit, I could not have my kids come to visit me, and this is the longest I've ever gone without seeing my kids. I was in there from Monday to Friday, and I did not see them at all, and it was really hard. They couldn't come see me because of the COVID unit, and the nurses basically said, like, you don't want them up here with what's going on, like, it's scary, there's a lot going on, you just don't want your kids here. And I was like, well, it's reasonable, it's understandable, but as a mother, I was like, I miss my babies, but yeah, don't bring them in here because I don't need them to get this, you know? So it was really lonely. I stared at the wall way too much, like way more than I should have. I stared at that wall. They didn't really give us a lot to do. They had a TV, there weren't a lot of channels, so we just stared and stared and stared and stared. They were weird about people bringing us stuff, so that was kind of annoying. And then on the last day that I was there, they locked me in my bed for the last day and a half. Basically, they put the bed alarm on. I was not allowed to leave the bed at all on my own, and I had a full new respect and understanding for children and time out and animals when you tell them to stay, because I was just like going crazy. I went from being like stress-free, normal, like let's figure out what's happening to me, to I'm going to go crazy. On my third day at the hospital, somebody actually tried to run and escape, and I'm thinking, like, you're in the hospital, like, getting treatment, why are you trying to run? But after I got locked into this bed, I was like, you know what, if that man runs again, I am going with him. I went crazy. It was just like, I was looking around the room and I was like, what can I stick in my bed to hold down my weight so that the alarm won't go off? Because I just wanted to brush my teeth on my own, like brush my teeth, go to the bathroom, like stand up, a normal, or like I dropped my phone on the floor and I leaned over to grab it and there goes the alarm. So I did trigger the alarm twice. Once I dropped my phone, grabbed it, triggered the alarm, and then the second time I leaned over my bed, it said off, so I was like, oh, I'm good, I can stand up. No, I could not. So I felt like an idiot because I was like, you know, as they run it and treat me like a child. So I'm not gonna go over like my health issues or what happened to me or how much worse that it got. It was a disaster. I mean, I was on 7 medications 4 times a day. I was being stabbed with different things in the stomach. I was getting iron supplements. Basically, my iron was at a 5 and it was supposed to be 20 to 60 range. So I was a mess. But I'm not going to go over what happened with my health issues in this video, because this video is basically just about my COVID unit stay. So I will go over what happened to me, my diagnosis, prognosis, what I now have to do as treatment getting out of the hospital, what it's like getting out of the hospital, but this was just about the COVID unit. So really quickly, I'm just going to go over what I said again. I know I rambled a lot, and I basically gave you a lot of that pointless information at the beginning, but I just don't want to add that in another video. It was just information that I needed to put in and stuff that I want to remember for myself, because I've already forgotten a lot of my stay. So basically, in the COVID unit, I felt like I was in Monsters Incorporated when that person has a sock on their back and they like strip them down, and you know, it's a little crazy. I had these like bright surgical lights on me when everybody's like inspecting me when I first came in. So that's what it felt like, just like you're this creature. And anytime I had to cough, I felt terrible, because I'm like, these people think that I'm like coughing out who knows what at them, and I was not. But you basically feel like you're in Monsters Inc. People are looking at you a little bit different because this is a virus that they haven't fully figured out yet, and so they are trying to get more information and figure out different things about it if you do have that. So I feel like they asked a lot more questions than they do in a normal stay that didn't even really apply to what I was going through, just to see if I fit in with what everybody else was going through. The incontinence thing, I didn't know about that. I didn't understand that that was like a bigger issue than I thought. Like that people my age, where most of the people in the unit were in Pampers, that they were, you know, constantly peeing all over the floor, that people couldn't go to the bathroom by themselves. When I came in, they said, do you want a catheter? Because most of the people in the unit who weren't in Pampers had catheters, or people had been denying them and then needing them later on. And I was like, I had no idea that was a bigger part of it than I thought. I had no idea that most of the people in the unit were going to be in my age range and not older. I didn't know that half the people in the unit were going to be so split in half on what they believed and didn't believe about the virus. I mean, I've seen so many different views on it outside of the hospital from people who have their own experiences or don't really know about it and what they just believe. Just in my own family, it's split down the middle, but being in the actual COVID unit where these people are experiencing it every day, to have such split opinions was really interesting for me. The treatment of it was interesting. It was interesting, definitely, that they added in that mental health portion. That was like a big part of treatment for the COVID patients. So I did think it was very interesting being in that unit. I would not want to go back there because the restrictions were not great, you know? It was sad being like completely alone for 5 days and like being treated for something that I didn't really have, or having him snuggle up to me and be able to cuddle him and put him to sleep. And it's kind of hard to sleep. Like, it's hard to sleep without my babies and with everything else that's been going on. So I'm gonna try and get some rest. I will update you guys more. I also really did feel, though, that a lot of the days that I were there was taken up by the assumption that I had COVID. So they didn't really get down to my issues, first of all, because the first couple days they only treated me like I had COVID. And so I tested negative the first time I went to the new hospital. They said there's a lot of false negatives. Tested me again. I tested negative. And then they tested me a third time. Again, they didn't force me. I just said fine because I wanted to make sure anyways, if I was going to go back to my kids and to my kids' great-great-grandparents, that I didn't have it. So I was fine with them testing again. But the whole beginning of my stay was geared towards, you probably have COVID, so let's treat you like that. And I didn't, so I feel like that took up a lot of my treatment. It was really kind of frustrating. Again, I understand, like I fully do. Fully understand. And my friend Drew, whose parents are nurses, helped me stay kind of like level-headed and understanding of the nurses and the doctors and the way that treatment was going, because this is something that's going on. And so I was able to be understanding of that, but they didn't get to my core reason of what was going on. Also, last thing I'm going to say, the kid's dad, who was deployed, was able to come back because I was not able to have the kids. So we needed childcare for the kids. I was going to need somebody there to help me get back out of the hospital and get back to regular life, because on the medications I was a mess. I was puking all day long, I was sleeping all day long. Like, the medications made me miserable and my condition made it harder. So he was going to come back and the Red Cross was going to send him back. They had to speak to a doctor or a nurse to basically clear if this was something real and that I'm not lying about it, to send him home. So they talked to the nurse, and she said that I was in there for COVID, and when I tested negative, they basically canceled it. So they said they were sending him home. When I tested negative, they canceled it. And I was like, wait, I'm not in here for COVID. That's not my issue. So a lot of my treatment, a lot of the things that were going on were geared towards COVID when I didn't have it. And it kind of hurt getting the other things dealt with. So I had like an extra 2 or 3 days that were just COVID centered, and then they moved on to what was actually going on with me. So I think my stay would have been a lot shorter if I was in a different unit, because they would have gotten to the issue. But I completely understand. So all in all, like I said, I don't have a lot of actual information on this. Like, I'm not an expert, I'm not a doctor, I'm not a nurse. All I know is my experience with the COVID unit in the hospital. Basically, it doesn't sound fun. I would not recommend getting COVID. It's actually real. If anything, people my age, people your age, people anyone's age can get it, and it's not recommended to get it, because if you get stuck in the COVID unit, you're not gonna have fun. You don't want to be there. Wash your hands and wear a mask. Also, I thought it was interesting because I do have a health issue that wearing a mask is not recommended. But at the hospital, I did wear a mask, and they had me monitored constantly so that if it caused any issues, they would tell me to take it off. But I ended up doing pretty okay with the mask on. So coming out, I'm able to wear a mask. I think that it's very important. I was wearing one before, but I definitely recommend staying healthy. So I know that this might cause some kind of issues or friction or whatever. I'm not trying to tell you my opinion or force my views onto you. I'm just telling you my exact experience in the Code Red unit. In the next video, though, I'll tell you what actually ended up happening with my health and my hospital stay and what I now have to do coming out of it. But last update, for those of you guys who don't know and don't follow me on my Instagrams, we bought a van, and we're doing a van build along with our bus build at the same time. The van build, though, in 4 days we got extremely far, so I'm very happy. Follow me on Instagram to see why. Look at the highlights, because I explain like why we got the van, because it sounds absolutely insane, and how far along that it's come, and what our plans are. We are actually going to be putting curtains up in the bus today and getting it all ready to move back into, and I'm so excited. So thank you guys for watching this roller coaster of a video and a lot of my pointless information of what's been going on with me. But I know a couple of you guys on Instagram have asked for a more detailed update, so that's why I told the beginning of the story along with this video, and I will be telling the rest of what went on in the next video. Thank you for watching. Have a nice day and stay healthy.